right, y'all. We're back. This is the Movie Idiot with the Shazam spoiler. I repeat, spoiler review. So if you have not seen Shazam, stop, back out, goodbye. Go watch some of my other videos. If you have seen Shazam, stick right here with me. We're going to talk Shazam. We're going to talk spoiler review. And we're going to start right now. So, the opening scene of Shazam. Now, actually, before I get to that, going into Shazam. Sorry, excuse me, guys. If you didn't know, I've been nursing a little bit of a cold, so I apologize if I cough throughout the video. But hey, we one take this stuff. That's how we do it. So, all right. Opening up in the beginning of Shazam. Actually, no. Before we get to wow, just fumbling all over this. Before we get to the beginning of Shazam, going into this movie, I didn't know what to think. When I heard that they were doing it, I was like, okay. I knew of Shazam. I'm not like the biggest comic book person, but I am completely into a lot of Marvel DC animation. When I was growing up, I would watch, Batman animated series, Superman, Batman animated series, Justice League, things like that. So I knew of Shazam. I knew what he was all about. I knew, about his character. I even knew that he used to be named Captain Marvel, which, as we know now, Marvel has a Captain Marvel. So, but I didn't know what to expect. I also knew that The Rock is slated to play Black Adam, who is not in this movie in any way. So, no spoiler there. I guess I had no idea what to expect. And so, open-minded. And then there were some pre-screenings done, I think, a couple of weeks ago, and I started hearing feedback on it, and it was all very positive. And then the trailers were coming out, and those were pretty funny. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna give this movie a shot. I'm gonna go into it. So we begin. The beginning of Shazam starts with a kid riding in the backseat of a car, and he's got a little magic 8-ball. And this was back in like the 70s. I think it says what year. Let's just say 1978. I don't remember the exact year. But kid sitting in the car, playing with a little magic 8-ball. His brother's giving him crap, and takes the 8-ball away from him. And then they're fighting over stuff. And the dad starts yelling at the kid. And next thing you know, wham! This car gets rammed, flips over. The dad gets thrown from the car. The brother and the kid go out, and the brother looks the kid dead in the eye and says, "This was your fault." Holy crap. What a way to start. That was powerful right from the get-go. Like, could you imagine being that kid? You're just trying to play with your magic 8-ball, and, that happens. Now, here's why that happened. It wasn't just that he was playing with his magic 8-ball. See, something magical happened to him. He was magically pulled from the car, so to speak, and brought into this lair. He gets into the lair, and he meets the old wizard. Now, the old wizard, the old Shazam, is trying to find somebody to take over his mantle. And only the purest of heart can. So he's talking to this kid, and he says, okay, I want you to take over my mantle, but first, a test. And he shows him this eye. And this eye is, obviously some type of power. And all of a sudden, the statues behind him start talking to him, and they're like, take it. The old man is lying. And things like that. So the kid starts walking towards the eye, and actually goes to reach out for it, and the wizard stops him, and he says, "You will never be worthy to have my power." Transports him right back into the car, and that's when all the craziness happens, because the kid's talking about the magic 8-ball. He's talking about, oh my God, this thing, and his brother and dad start yelling at him, and the brother takes the 8-ball away, and then like the car ends up getting hit, dad gets thrown, and that's when the brother says to him, "This is your fault." And I was just like, holy crap. Like, that was, man, woof. Right from the get-go. So, we go from that to a mom. So, it skips ahead, present day. or ish. And it's a mom at a carnival with what ends up being a young Billy Batson, and she's trying to throw darts to win him a little carnival prize or whatever, and she can't really do it, and he's like, I want that tiger, mommy, I want that tiger, and basically the best thing she's able to get him is a compass, right? So they start walking away from this thing, and he drops the compass, and it gets kicked into a crowd, and he's fumbling through this crowd, weaving in and out or whatever, trying to get to this compass. Eventually gets the compass and can't find his mom. Lost his mother. So then he finds the nearest policeman, lets him know, hey, lost my mom, and they're consoling him on this police car, and like, I'm sure he'll turn up, I'm sure he'll turn up. Well, fast forward, we find an older Billy Batson, about 14, 15 years old. And he is standing outside of this house saying, just like going over like, hey, I'm your son. Hey, so assuming at this point, the scene is saying basically that he found his mom and he's going to introduce himself. Well, he knocks on the door and, and hey, and she's like, who is it? And he's like, I think I'm your son. And she opens the door and it's this black lady and she says, are you sure? And he's like, never mind. Actually, I digress. See, I had to back up a little bit. I missed something. So, what happened right before that is the reason he ended up at that house is he actually tricked a couple policemen into like coming into the shop, locks them in, goes in their police car, looks up her name and address, finds it, and that's how he ended up at her door. In which case then, right after she's like, are you sure? When she opens the door, the cops show up and take him in. So he gets taken in. So it goes to another scene shortly after that, or right around there, where he ends up in like a foster thing, and he basically ends up with new foster parents. The foster parents are super nice, by the way. They were played by Cooper Andrews and Marta Milans. Forgive me on the pronunciations if I don't quite have them right. Really, really, really cool, like great foster parents. Very well done by the actors, by the way. They really portrayed, and I think with the whole foster family in particular. So he gets into this foster house, and Shazam does a great job of kind of portraying what a successful foster family should look like, which is really cool. Because like you always hear about the nightmares, right? You never hear about the good ones. And these kids that Billy ends up meeting they're a family. Like you can tell, everybody in there. They literally do that when they eat dinner. Everybody in, and they all put their hand in the center of the table and stuff. That's so cool, really cool. So, he ends up with this foster family, and there's one kid in particular, Freddie, who he ends up bunking with basically in the same room, and he's disabled. He's got kind of a cane, and he has trouble getting around and whatnot. So it goes through that a little bit, and him kind of trying to acclimate to that, and then the movie gets to another scene, and it explains then afterwards who that kid was in the beginning. The kid in the beginning, of course, is Dr. Sivia, played by Mark Strong. And Mark Strong is amazing in this movie, as he always is. You may recognize Mark Strong from movies like... now, I like it when he plays villains the best, by the way. So, like Kick-Ass. He's amazing in Kick-Ass. But you also have seen him in things like the Golden Circle, and there's a few others. Anyway, Mark Strong. So it goes to this scene where there are people coming in, and they're having kind of like, or not coming in, I should say, but they're having like a video chat with this other doctor, who is basically, they're trying to figure out why people are seeing these visions. And the visions are all the same as basically the opening scene. So it's not that they're seeing visions at all, but she's telling them that, oh, it's just, visions. You're just having some sort of psychoses of some kind, when in actuality, they're getting taken by this wizard, and none of them are worthy. And it starts showing this video board of all of the people that weren't worthy. But this particular interview that they're having is kind of piques Mark Strong's interest, or Dr. Sivia's, I should say. Siviana. I'm terrible with the name. Sorry, Dr. Siviana, I think it is. But anyway, it piques his interest a little bit because he when he had gotten abducted, right after he got abducted and got into the car, there were some images that popped up on the Magic 8 Ball that he was trying to figure out. Well, it ended up being some kind of sequence of images, and this person had recorded, because they had saw the same thing on their alarm clock, and so they recorded this sequence of images. And what Dr. Sivana figured out is that the sequence is repeating itself 7 times. So he walks into his office, and this other doctor lady follows him, and she's like, "What is going on?" And he's like, "This actually isn't about psychosis at all. They're all telling the truth." And she's like, "That's crazy." So he writes these sequence numbers, or symbols, I should say, on this door, this random door that he has in his office. Sorry again. And he writes them on there, and all of a sudden they're like light up, and the door starts like energizing. She's like, "What's going on?" and touches the door, and this doctor like melts down into nothing. But for some reason, he's able to just walk right in, which I don't get it. Well, the door ended up being the entryway into the lair of the old wizard. So he walks right in there, and he starts talking to the old wizard, and he's like, and the old wizard, of course, looks much older now and much more decrepit. And he says, "Oh, you've never found a replacement, and do you remember me?" And of course, the old wizard does remember him as the kid in the beginning of the movie. And so he turns and he grabs that eye and shoves it in his face. So Dr. Sivana does this. So he shoved this eye in his face. And all of a sudden, all the statues break apart, and they're like, "You can't contain us anymore, wizard." And they all fly into Dr. Sivana. And the old wizard says, "They're just using you." And he's basically like, "I don't care." And so he leaves. Flash forward. So now it goes to a new scene. And Dr. Sivana shows up at his father's company. And his father's having a board meeting, and one of the board members at the Savannah Corporation is his oldest brother as well. So he goes right up to his oldest brother, and he's like, "You told me it was all my fault." And he's like, "I was telling the truth." And he's basically saying this to his father and his brother. He ends up killing his brother. He ends up killing the whole boardroom. But the way he does it is he releases all these monsters. Now, these monsters are the 7 deadly sins. So it's greed, lust, gluttony. Forgive me, I don't know all the 7 deadly sins. So, but anyway, the point is they're monster representations of the 7 deadly sins. Envy is definitely one of them. And so, anyway, the monstrous representations of the sins ends up killing, like, all the people in the boardroom. And he ends up leaving his dad for last, and he walks up to him, and he's basically like, "Look, what are you?" "Oh, of course, you're Greed." "Well, Greed, you can have him." And then Greed walks up and just basically mutilates the crap out of him as he walks out. So, flash forward a little bit more. Billy is now, or a different scene, new scene. Billy's in school with his foster, brothers and sisters or whatever. The foster brothers and sisters, for the most part, most of them don't have huge parts, but there are a couple who do. The oldest foster sister, Mary, definitely does. And then obviously Freddie is a huge part of it. And then there's another one, I think her name is Darla. And she's like this little girl, and she's a big hugger. She just like hugs them all the time. So they're in school, and Freddie's getting bullied, and Billy ends up standing up to these bullies. Sorry. He ends up standing up to these bullies, and kind of fends him off a little bit, and then he ends up running away, and the bullies chase after him instead of going after Freddy, and he ends up on a subway car. Well, while he's on this subway car, all of a sudden, he gets transported to the wizard's lair. So back to the old wizard again. And actually, this is the scene right here you're looking at, where Billy is seeing the wizard for the first time. And the wizard is basically like, he's like, look, I need a successor. He's basically like, I don't know if you're worthy or not, but you're the last one. You're the last hope, So he says, take my staff and say my name. And Billy, of course, is like, dude, no, I'm not touching your staff. Gross, But, and he's like, do it, And so finally he does grab it and says Shazam. And sure enough, he gets the powers of Shazam. And then doesn't know how to get rid of him or anything, because then the wizard just turns into dust. So he has no instruction. He's totally endowed with all of this power of the wizard, and he didn't know what to do with it. So flash forward to the next scene. Basically, he shows up at his foster house. They're all looking for him. Like, the foster parents are on the phone. Everybody's trying to find him. Nobody knows where he went. And he slams a sign on the window. It says, "Don't scream." And of course, Freddy's doing dishes, and he's like, "Ah!" He's like, "I told you not to scream." So Freddy ends up meeting him outside, and he's like, "It's me, it's Billy," and he has to like prove that it's him. He's like, "Look, I stole the bullet that bounced off Superman," because Freddy had this bullet from some bullet certificate, or a certificate of authenticity, that it bounced off Superman or whatever. But so he shows him he stole this bullet, and then he ends up dropping it in the sewer. So all of a sudden they just start trying to, like, from there they start trying to figure out all the superpowers that he has. So as they're arguing, there's somebody getting mugged, and all of a sudden he's like, dude, you should probably do something about that, So he goes to run over there, and of course he gets it like instantly because he's like super fast. So super speed, obviously. He ends up stopping the mugger, and this girl, he's like, so he goes to stop this mugging, but he didn't stop the mugger. Actually, the girl who's getting mugged had already maced him, and the mugger was the one that was screaming, not the girl, which was really funny. And then the girl and him start arguing a little bit, and then he accidentally, like, I think he shot lightning or something and scared her. She's like, "Just here, take all my money." She gives him like $73 and runs away. So they end up going to a convenience store, and of course, while they're there, they're trying to get beer. Which you've probably seen in the trailer. "Oh, we'd like your finest beer, please." Well, while they're there, the place gets mugged, and they find out he has bullet immunity, so bullet immunity, he's got, so, again, excuse me. So he ends up, he's like, "Shoot me again, shoot me again, shoot me in the chest, shoot me in the face," so they shoot him in the face, and like, "Yep, bounce right off." And then he's like, he looks up at the muggers, he's like, "Well, you're dead," and throws him out the window. Walks out with the beer. He's like, "You're welcome for not getting mugged." They take one sip of beer, spit it out everywhere, because everybody remembers their first beer, right? So go back in, walk back out with a bunch of like junk food, and it was funny. Good scene, really good. And again, the interaction between Freddy and Zach Levi as Shazam was amazing. Like, Zach Levi did such a great job of portraying the little kid trapped in a grown man's body. It was phenomenal, actually. Really good. I know a lot of people think, "Oh, well, this is, like, big. Tom Hanks is big." Well, yes, but I mean, honestly, this came out back in the 30s. So this story is much older than Tom Hanks is big. So, I mean, you actually have to understand that this comic book, excuse me, has been around for a long time. So anyway, then it starts going through a montage of them trying to figure out, what powers he has. Does he have flight? Does he have super strength? does he, like, what can he do? So they start testing things. Does he have mind control powers or whatever? So they're crossing some off, and so. But while they're doing this, Freddy is videoing them all and putting it on on YouTube. He's uploading all these videos to YouTube of Shazam trying to do this stuff, and every time he uploads a video, he gives him a different name. So like, one of them's Captain Sparkle Fingers, and one of it's like crazy all the different names they come up with, which is really funny. So they're doing all that, and then they end up at school, and Freddy's talking about how he's friends with Shazam, and of course the bullies confront him and are like, "Yeah, your friends will prove it." And he's like, "Well, tomorrow I'm gonna have Shazam here. I'm gonna have him here, and he's gonna be here for lunch, So, apparently Shazam, and so he's asking Billy then, "Dude, you gotta have Shazam come for lunch. You gotta, They end up skipping school at one point. Actually, they had skipped school to do all the tests. I apologize. They skipped school to do all the tests, the power tests, to see what they can do. And that was a funny scene too, because like they're trying to walk out past security guard, and the security guard's like, "Well, your parent needs to be here." And Billy's like, "Well, my parent is here," and walks around the corner and turns into Shazam, and then throws on a trench coat really quick and walks around. He's like, "Yes, I'm here for these kids." It's good. Sorry, excuse me again. Ugh. Whew, I can't wait till I'm not sick anymore. Anyway, so moving on. So when Mark Strong's character, Dr. Sivana, when he had done the whole boardroom scene, the statues, the Sins, were talking to him right at the end, and they were saying, "Look, there is one." He's like, "I have all this power," when he's talking to his dad, and that's when the statues tell him, "No, there's one stronger than you." And, the wizard found his champion. So at this point now, we get to a point where, Shazam, Billy is going around doing like all sorts of stupid things to get money. So like, he's taking selfies with people, and like this couple takes a selfie with him, and he's like, "Well, normally I get some money for that," as they walk away. And I'm really sorry. Anyway, so he's doing that, and then there's a scene where he's, standing out in Philadelphia, kind of like on the stairs. I think it's on the stairs, like where the Rocky pose happened. All this is based in Philadelphia, by the way. And he's out there, and he's got a guitar case laid out, and he's shooting lightning bolts, shooting lightning, and people are throwing money into the case, basically. And he's trying to make more money, off of this whole thing. And during this scene, this is where Shazam was supposed to show up for lunch for Freddy, and of course doesn't, and Freddy gets his butt kicked, basically. He gets what they call the briefcase wedgie, where they pick him up from both sides and carry him. Yeah, they explain that too. It's really funny. So Billy shows up on the stairs where or not Billy, Freddy shows up on the stairs where Billy's doing all this stuff, trying to get money as Shazam, and he's like, "Dude, like, what do you even do?" He's like, "You have all this power and you don't do anything, and you're pathetic." And he's like, "Yes, I do." He's like, "I shoot lightning from my fist," and as he does that, lightning goes and hits a bus. It hits the front tire of a bus, blows up the tire. Of course, the bus goes flying off the bridge, and he ends up having to catch the bus. Does catch the bus, saves all the people, even though he, caused it. And that's when Freddy comes up, and he's like, "Did you see that?" He's like, "Yeah, you almost killed those people." He says, "Yeah, but then I caught him," and they keep fighting. And Freddy's like, you basically just telling him, "Dude, you're just a big show off. You're nobody." And, it sucks. And Billy's like, "Well, you're just jealous you don't have the power. And he's like, "Yeah, because I'd actually do something with it." And then it cuts away. Or no, that's not when it cuts away. Then, it gets to another scene, or shortly right thereafter in that scene is where Dr. Sivana shows up. He finally found Shazam, because all this is on the news. Dr. Sivana shows up and, of course, attacks Shazam. And Billy has no idea how to use these powers, and Dr. Sivana does. And Sivana's like, basically like, "Give me your power." dude. Like, you don't deserve this power. I want it. Give me the power. And he's just wailing on him. And in this point, he finds out he can fly. Shazam does. Finds out he can fly. So he figures out the power of flight, and he tries to fight back as much as he can, but he's so inexperienced, he has no idea what he's doing. He's getting his butt kicked, and he ends up like running or crashing into this mall and running away. He ends up in a toy store, and this is like one of the funniest kind of homages in the movie is while he's in this toy store. Of course, you saw in the trailer where he throws the Batman at Dr. Sivana, but there's also a part where he's running out and he ends up stepping on one of those pianos like you see in the movie Big. And he's standing there and he's staring at Dr. Sivana, and the whole time I'm going, don't do it. Like, really, are they going to do this? But he just kind of does that and then just runs away. So they didn't do it, but it was still a funny little homage, you know, to the movie Big and the similarities between the two. So I thought it was cute and funny, and it was a good thing to do. So he runs away, and then he finally ends up in a crowd and says, Shazam. And he transforms into a kid. Of course, Dr. Sivana doesn't know what he looks like as a kid, so he gets away. Well, who was there in the mall was Freddy. And Dr. Sivana kind of sees Freddy screaming, Billy, 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 where are you, you know? And then he looks at a TV monitor, and the TV monitor shows Freddy arguing with Shazam, and he puts two and two together, and he takes him. In the meantime, so now it flashes over to the foster parents' house. The foster parents are like, I don't know where Freddy or Billy are. We don't know what's going on. We need to go find them now. You know, so the foster parents tell everybody, okay, you guys stay here. We're going to go find Billy and Freddy. They leave. And right after that, Dr. Sivana shows up with Freddy at the house. So now he has all the kids at the house. While this is going on, Billy, all the foster kids at one point, I missed a scene. Shocking. I gotta get better at this. Hey, it's my first one. Well, second. Anyway, so all the foster kids had actually tracked down Billy's mom. One of them is kind of like a super nerd geek, of course, you know, computer hacker type thing. So he figured out who Billy's mom was, and Billy went to go see her. Billy goes to see his mom, and then it paints another picture. And this is another really powerful scene in this movie. And it's funny because this movie is very lighthearted, but there's a couple of scenes where it's just like gut-wrenching almost. You feel terrible. And this is another one. So Billy goes to see his mom and finds out that on the day that he got lost in that carnival, she knew and saw him with the police and just walked away. And she's like, look, I was 17 when I had you, and your dad left, and I just figured whoever ended up with you would take better care of you, and you were in better hands with them. And then, what is worse, she then says, I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready for you, basically. And it's just, wow. Like, who, what? I couldn't believe it. I was like, man, you know, I did not expect that. And, you know, I'm sure some of the more comic book people knew the story and expected that. I didn't see that coming, and I was like, oof, wow. So he's like, it's all right, basically, and it's just leaves, and he's mad. And he takes off, and then he says Shazam, and he flies off. And oh no, sorry. As he's walking away, he gets a call from Dr. Sivy on Freddy's phone, and he's like, hey, I got your brother. And then so he goes, and this is kind of the montage, superhero montage. Shazam, boom, flies off, goes to save his foster kid, friends or whatever. So he shows up. Excuse me. Billy shows up at the foster house, and he, basically Dr. Savy's like, get in here. And he's like, no. And, basically Dr. Sivvy's like, oh, no, you're coming inside right now or they're going to die, basically. And he has one or two of the monsters come out. He's like, okay. And so he comes in, and then Dr. Sivia does the symbols on the door for the closet and opens it, and it's the door to the wizard's chamber. And he's like, let's go in, and there's a big fight that happens. And all of the monsters end up surrounding Billy as Shazam, and basically are like, he's holding the staff, and he's like, grab the staff and say your name and give me your power, and tell me your name. And as all that's happening, all the monsters now, all of them, all the 7 deadly sins are around Shazam, and Dr. Sivana has the staff, and Billy's holding it. He's about to tell him his name, and all of a sudden, Dr. Sivana gets hit in the back of the head with another piece of paraphernalia that Freddy has, which is a batarang. A batarang, again, certified. Or no, that was a actual replica, he said, sorry. So a replica batarang, and he gets hit back of the head, and what Billy notices when he turns around is that he's bleeding. And so then they start fighting back, and they end up getting Dr. Sivana out of there and whatnot. And then Billy realizes at some point that let me see here. Hold on, sorry. So they're basically trying to get out of there, and they fight and whatnot. And Billy realizes at that point that when the sins are not in Dr. Sivana, that he can be injured, and this becomes very important later. So he ends up getting him out of the room, and they end up somehow in like another carnival. And Dr. Sivana is chasing him there, and there's a ton of people around, and of course Dr. Sivana basically releases the 7 deadly sins at the carnival, and it's just like ravaging the place. And Billy can't beat him, basically. He now Sivana doesn't release all of the sins. He's also figured that out. If he's released all the sins, that he's depowered, or it seems that way anyway. So they're fighting, and Billy can't seem to beat him. And Billy then is able to figure out that he had a memory of what the wizard told him. The wizard said, now, in the wizard's chamber, there are like 7 thrones, and obviously one for Shazam, and then there are 6 more. Well, Billy realizes that the wizard's power, the wizard told him, he's like, my fellow wizards and I used to occupy all these thrones, but they're gone, and I'm all that's left, and I have all the power. He realized he had all the power in him for the rest of them. So he transfers power to his brothers and sisters, and what you get then is the Shazam family, which I did not know existed. And again, I follow some comics and stuff, but I don't follow close enough to know that was a thing. So all of a sudden, all his brothers and sisters are superpowered. And what this did is it allowed them to take on the 7 deadly sins. Shazam then, or as many, they were actually 5 monsters or 6 monsters that came out, and 1 was left inside of Dr. Sivana. So they're taking on all the monsters. Well, Billy is fighting Dr. Sivana. And the Shazam fam, they figured out pretty quickly kind of how to use their powers and whatnot, and they're able to kind of hold off, not overpower by any means, but hold off the monsters as much as they can. And Billy gets Dr. Sivana. Shazam gets Dr. Sivana on a rooftop far away. And they kind of fly off, and they're fighting. And he knows that he's got one more of the monsters in him, and it's envy. And he starts talking to Envy, and he's literally talking to the Sin, not the Dr. Sivana guy anymore. He's talking to Envy. He's like, Envy, why won't he let you out? What, are you not strong enough? You know, and he just keeps going. He's talking crap to this sin monster. And finally, because it's envy, and he can't take it anymore, and he's jealous, and he wants to fight too, just like the rest of them, comes out. Well, when that happens, Billy's able to go over and get the eye out of Dr. Savannah's head, basically. He's able to overpower the monster and then get the eye out of Dr. Savannah's head and then trap all the monsters in there, and they overcome and win. And it was cool. It was done well. I initially didn't know how I felt about the Shazam fam, so to speak, but like the more I've seen it, the more I'm cool with it and the more I like it. And then, you know, credits, and then there is an awesome end credit scene, a really good one, with Freddy sitting at lunch, and all of a sudden Shazam shows up at lunch, and he's like, oh, and I brought a friend, and then out walks Superman. Now you only see him from the neck down because right now DC doesn't have an actor, but awesome scene, really cool, made me laugh. I was like, yes. And then there's one other end credit scene, which I'm actually not going to spoil. I'm going to leave that one out of the spoiler review so that you guys can enjoy it. It's basically, it teases another villain coming up, and you'll see the next villain, basically, for Shazam. So anyway, that's going to conclude my Shazam review. Oh, wait a minute, hold on. That's not going to conclude it. We got one more thing. The rating. What did I rate this movie? So I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5 stars for Shazam. 4 out of 5. It was really good, really well written. Again, there were a couple of scenes that just really gut-wrenching scenes. The humor was fun. Again, I don't know quite how I feel about the Shazam fam thing, but I feel a little bit better now that I did some research to find out that was an actual thing, so it's not something they made up. So in that regard, you know, like, they're being true to the comic, but all in all, the movie is wonderful. Really good, really fun, really awesome movie. So yeah, 4 out of 5 stars for Shazam. Thank you guys for checking out this video, spoiler review of Shazam. I am the Movie Idiot. My name is Mike. Thank you all for watching, and have a good one.